well, citizens, have the right to vote. And what they did was, they made the newly freed black slaves, they made it a law that you had to pass this test. Nowadays, today, you don't have to do that anymore. That's gone. That's been abolished. But they made this test like stupid hard, especially considering that you were talking to a population of people who had just been freed from slavery, therefore they never went to school. So it's in a language they don't know, asking questions they don't know the answers to. But it was done on purpose.
One of the tests was written in Latin.
It was written in Latin, exactly. And also, what is the next thing?
They had to pay taxes to vote.
That's called a poll tax. Write that down, a poll tax. A poll tax is when they literally make you pay taxes to get into the place to vote, but newly freed slaves had lots of money or little money? A lot?
Sorry.
Okay.
It's okay. So, what does that mean though? Like, poor white people can't pay taxes and pass those tests either because of education levels. So what did they start doing? They started making new laws. That is an example of what word on there? Segregation. And discrimination, really. Yeah. How is it segregation?
Because they're making separate laws for white people and black people.
Correct.
And I just dropped it.
So it's kind of like the beginnings of segregation. And it started with voting. As a test.
They say if your grandfather could vote before the Civil War, then you could vote, which basically means if you're white, you can vote.
Right.
Because if you're black, your grandfather
Couldn't vote before the Civil War.
It meant that every person who is white can vote because before the Civil War, blacks are slaves.
We're slaves.
We're slaves and couldn't vote, but whites could.
Right.
So it's unfair for the blacks.
Okay. So that's an example of yeah. This is more discrimination because you're discriminating legally against a group of people who they couldn't do that because their grandparents couldn't. It's kind of like saying if your grandparents, if your great-great-grandparents could fly an airplane, then you can fly an airplane. Or you can have voting rights or something like that. Could your great-great-grandparents fly an airplane? Probably not, because they had just been invented. You know what I mean? It's kind of like it's like random rule that doesn't really make any sense. So if your grandfather could vote before the Civil War, then you could vote too. Where was this law written? Where was this? Place. Yeah, where? Where did they have this law? In all of America, or one state, or one region, or one country, or where was it? I know it was in America, rather, but where? In the South in general? Okay, just right down in the South. It's incredible.
And so there was a team that put together?
It was a team that worked together.
So there were two people presenting.
Two people were presenting. They chose to. There was a group of four. One of them, in fairness, just came back yesterday. He was out all last week with some sort of illness. So it was really just three of them that put it together. And my understanding is the way that they did the project is I assigned them a lesson out of a chapter that we're doing in American history. And they took that lesson, broke it up into pieces, more or less equal amounts of whatever. Then they had to take sort of notes that you could transfer to a PowerPoint. And then the one student typed it all in. And it's the student that
You take the weakest in English gets to type it in, but why not?
But she did it.
She has the confidence, and
She did it very well. And all we needed to do was, because it's a Smartboard, all we had to do was take the little pens and markers or whatever they give you for the Smartboard, and just sort of fill in little things that were maybe missed. And I think every student, I think every group is going to have things where they write something and it's a bit incomplete as far as, well, you know, what does this exactly mean?
Right.
So as far as that goes, she's right on par with all her other classmates. The only issue she had was a few grammatical things that maybe some of her other classmates won't make those same mistakes. But they're considering the amount of time she's been working on the language as a whole. It's pretty amazing.
So for me as an outsider, I look at this and say, you've now reduced the amount of talking time. You lecture less, and the students are making the presentation.
Yeah, today's Thursday. We didn't have school Monday, so Tuesday and Wednesday they worked. Last Friday I introduced it to them. I've just been making sure that they've worked since last Friday. I haven't really had to do anything. And then just the constant reminders while they're doing it. Remember, this is for notes for the rest of the group. Remember to take, you have a lot of information in that book. Distill it to, you know, as a constant reminder, make sure that the information you give me is relevant. Make sure that it's not just some random sentence that you're putting on there because you think you need to fill in space. Right. Don't make 100 slides with every single sentence in the lesson. Give me 10 slides with pertinent information. Right. Just said it over and over again and made sure that they were working.
So you got your audio learners, you probably had written instructions as well.
Absolutely. For written, yeah, well, I had the directions that were on the board, so they could see that. I mean, basically that was all that I had as far as written goes. But I think the written learners were the ones who volunteered to actually type the thing out.
Sure.
A couple things that I learned from now on, what I'm going to do when I do have a project like this, especially if it's groups. Individuals, it's not so bad, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the desks, like if it's a group of 4, I'll line them up.
Oh, interesting.
Or maybe like a half circle.
Right. For the team.
For that team, and I'm going to do it facing away from my desk. Because so kids aren't playing around the way they're not supposed to be playing around on the computer, so I can always monitor because I had.
So you'll be able to see the computer.
Always, right. And I think that if I don't want to put them in lines because that's so boring. Right. But I don't want to put them in circles because if I'm walking around, I noticed there was a few students that miraculously, no matter where I was, they were angling and would close their iPad with a little flap thing. Right. And I don't like that. I'm not playing that game. I'm not doing that. Right. So from now on, it's going to be probably half circles because if I'm just walking around in the back and you're over on one side of the room, if it's a half circle, I can still see whatever it is that I need to see.
What I particularly like about what you're going through is you're making that transition from being lecturer to, and what we're capturing now is the little hiccups. We're never perfect the first time.
It's never going to be perfect, but it's amazing the amount of things you learn just from the first time doing a project like this. For me, I mean, learning as far as how to. Next time I'm going to put together just some sort of sheet. I think I'm going to have it. Our computer program that we use is managebac. I'm going to just upload one thing to the class and tell them, well, if you want to print it out and have it with you, you can. That's fine. You can just leave it on managebac and just look at it and do a visual checklist. I'm going to leave it up to them. Everybody's a little different. Whatever works.
It'll be their
it would have to be a rubric, yeah.
And it'll be like a little checklist.
A little checklist of,
I'm expecting, legibility. Their choice of font was interesting.
I just didn't have that this time. I didn't do a rubric for it.
Well,
that's not a big deal. Yeah. They did well. So far, they're doing well. Right. The students who are watching the presentations are taking notes, and I told them that the presentations that you put together, I mean, I'm going to check them first, against, because I told them just to use the book, keep it simple, for purposes of simplicity at the moment. But I'm going to make the quizzes and then on the test, which I have to do, because I have to,
Right.
I'm going to make them based on their PowerPoints.
Sure.
And even today still, after a week of this, one of the students said, the first thing I said was, everybody take out paper and something to write with. Who wants to go first? This group happened to go up, it was lesson 3, it was just a random thing, that's fine, doesn't really matter what order it is really. And so I said, all right, you guys, make sure you guys are taking notes on their thing. And one student said, we're taking notes on these?
No connection that this is actually the lecture in place of the lecture.
I've said it every day for the
Right.
last 4 days.
So it's in a culturalization. That
It
they
is.
Eventually, they
It
will
is.
start expecting their colleagues to be presenting valuable information.
That would also, but I also take responsibility for that as well, because I did not give them a rubric. I did
Right.
not give them a written set of, I had some stuff on the board. If he happened to have looked across the board in the last week, he might have seen it.
Right.
Maybe not.
And so that's why I find this valuable, because there were some hiccups, and we have to show other teachers that there are hiccups.
And they weren't major.
In the process.
They
Great.
were
Thank you very much for your presentation.
not a problem.